Whether you're a new Squarespace designer or you've been at the job for a few years, the likelihood is you didn't get into it for aspects like SEO and page load speed. But nevertheless, us as designers, we need to take these aspects seriously as well. Today, I'm going to run through Google PageSpeed Insights, in particular for Squarespace. We're also going to review Squarespace's own website as well to see whether it passes or fails. And we're going to be exploring some of the aspects, some of the caveats that we may need to take seriously but don't want to overthink. And there is one aspect in particular, the fact that Squarespace now creates WebP images, which are smaller, faster loading on our sites. But there is a problem with PageSpeed Insights at the moment, creating false positives in terms of load speed. And I'll be covering all of this in just a moment. This video is designed for beginners to intermediates. So if you've been using PageSpeed Insights as part of your process to optimize your websites before going live, I still think that there's one or two tips here that will help you. And if they do, leave a comment and I'd love to get the discussion going. Let's crack on. Every now and again, we at Pixel Hey Studio will go through some of our sites and our client sites just to look at them for page load speed, which is one of the most important aspects for SEO and getting more traffic, alongside backlinks from trusted resources. Basically, it's sending signals that Google can trust your website over others. The problem we have with websites is that when they are updated regularly, they are living, breathing things. So the report that we carry out on the go live process needs to be done more frequently. I must admit, it's been a little while since I last been through this particular site. And spoiler alert, this is running a little bit slower than it has been in the past. So we're going to fix some of these later. But this tutorial is to give you a behind the scenes, for some of you, a first impression of what Google PageSpeed Insights is, but also what we can take seriously and some issues that arise as false positives with the Squarespace platform. And to start off, we'll just have a quick look through the site. We can see that there's some image content, some optimized, some that we could probably save a bit of time on. This is a bit of an issue where we have lots of images going through the blog setup, and these are dynamic. What we don't want to be doing is manually compressing every one of those news summaries because we want an efficient updating system. So I would say medium to high image usage on this site. We don't have any background video. At the same time, I wanted to give you the PageSpeed Insights for Squarespace, which passes on desktop, but is still kind of near the top end of the load times for the pass. And we can see the performance is at 51. I think 50 to 60 is absolutely fine. You shouldn't be penalized too much for that, especially because the user experience, which I'll come on to later, is actually better than what is being scored here. And then if we look at mobile, incidentally, Squarespace themselves, their own website, fails on this front. But again, we're still in those acceptable but higher areas. And then we can see the reasons for why it's been scored down and failed here. But we're not going to focus too much on Squarespace. I just wanted to use that as an example. What we will do, though, is have a look at the report for our desktop view for Pixel Hey Academy. So we can see that the content LCP, and if we click on any of these, it will tell you what each of them does. And that's important. So if you want more information, have a look through that. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail today on these particular ins and outs. I tend to look at them as a whole. So these are, I would say, fine performance. I think we can make these a little bit quicker with a couple of things, but we can see our performance here is dropped to 36. Usually this hits between the 50 and 60, which is more than acceptable for me because I want to get the balance. I don't want it to be a simple HTML page with very little content and no dynamism to it as well, because even though that will score really high on page load speed, it's not going to perform really well in terms of user experience and impact. So we're always playing that trade-off with our sites. But there are certainly things that we can do. But the one thing I wanted to point out in particular, and this is where people spend a lot of time image shrinking to get the site to work. And one thing I discovered back in August is that Squarespace will create false positives. What do I mean by that? Well, Squarespace has its own content delivery network, which is called the CDN. And I thought the easiest thing would be to show you this in action. So if I go to the admin and then I go to assets, we'll go into our asset library where we've got all of our folders and our files in here. So with each of these images, what we see here are the originals. You can see them taking a long time to load. I think my internet's been a bit dodgy today as well, so they're taking even longer. But these are high-res photos that have taken quite some time to load. However, what's actually happening on the site itself is a much faster loading site. What Squarespace will now do is convert these JPEG and PNG images into WebP, which is far more optimized and on average has a much smaller file size. If you then compress your photos before uploading them, you can get that double benefit. But in most cases, the fact that Squarespace will now deliver all of your images in a WebP format will mean that your website to the user will load much quicker. If you're a Squarespace designer and you're struggling with the SEO aspects, then you're not alone. Thankfully, the team at SEO Space have built a platform specifically for this challenge. It initially puts a focus on what you can do on the site to improve your rankings, to get all of those basics covered, the things that have taken me best part of 20 years to truly master. Now you've got software that you can log into, it's all online based, and it will guide you through those steps. And there's also a lot more under the hood as well. Another benefit of SEO Space is that the price increases with your demands. So as your agency grows, then you can use it on more websites, and then of course the fee goes up, but you're also making more money in return. I've left a link in the description. It's well worth taking a look at if you want to either provide SEO as a service and you're a Squarespace designer, or you just want to make sure that your websites are top notch by the time you go live and ship them out the door. There's a link in the description, pop down and have a look. But now back to the video. The problem we've got is that PageSpeed Insights is still seeing the original files and not the WebP format. And I didn't see this at first, and I was wondering why we weren't seeing any sort of performance benefit when we're running these reports. And that was because it's seeing what the CDN library is delivering, not what the end user is seeing. Should we take this seriously? Yes and no. If you're in a highly competitive market, then you may want to convert all your images to WebP so it doesn't come up with false positives and we get higher scores here. Otherwise, I would just look at getting your scores up, so in this case, back up into the 50s, and I think that will be absolutely fine. Because the way Google will rank sites will be many different factors, and if you're not in a highly competitive market, it probably won't fight against you. And I've done some background research on that, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that's the case. So what we're trying to do is get a balance between you not needing to manually compress all your photos before uploading them, and at the same time getting the benefits of the WebP format that Squarespace will automatically create when you upload your images to the file manager. And not only that, it will create multiple versions of that image. So we can see here we've got the format at 750 pixels width. So if we were to have a look at this image, sorry to put that one on you, we can see it's not loading a huge image, that helps, but also that's showing the PNG file, not the rendered WebP. It's just the way the CDN works. So there may be an update in PageSpeed Insights to allow for that, which will make it much easier in future. We don't have to worry about it at all, and our scores will be higher by default. But I always think if you're just starting out as a designer and all of this aspect on load speed is quite confusing for you, ultimately the aspects that we're looking at, there'll be some that we can't do anything about because we're using a platform like Squarespace. But what I will say is Squarespace is solid and competitive when it comes to decent SEO performance. I'm not going to say it's industry leading because bespoke development will offer you the level of control that you can't have with a platform like Squarespace. However, the price point is usually way higher. So we're always kind of having that trade-off. But we have delivered and run retainers on projects that get thousands of visitors per month and several £1,000s worth of income per month through the e-commerce store. I have personally found this platform has never held me back from those projects. If, of course, you are looking at several £100,000 turnover per month where every little detail matters, Squarespace can still compete in that market, but you are then having a trade-off between ease of update and convenience versus control over the smallest of details. But anyway, hopefully that's helped. So we can see here now that the SEO, best practices and accessibility are all up in the 90s. That's solid. Performance is the area that needs some work. You do run the risk sometimes, though, of overthinking this particular score here, because the way Squarespace works as a content management system, which gives us so many different benefits of being able to build pages quickly and on the fly, means that that score is really likely to ever get into the greens for that area. But we certainly should expect them for the other three as well. And in fact, with a little bit of work, we can probably get that SEO score up to the mid-90s at least, and the same with the accessibility. All of these are taken into account alongside all of the offsite factors, and probably more important than anything is, are we providing really strong content for our audience? Are we posting regularly so there's a consistency to how we post? Therefore, our website is going to be seen as being a better candidate for Google when someone searches. If this has helped you, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're after a partner to help you with a certain problem you have with your Squarespace site, or you're looking for someone to take over your site and build you a sparkly new one on the Squarespace platform, then I'll leave a link to Pixel Studio in the description, and feel free to give us a shout. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Cheers.